Okay, my dear children. So, as you know, in my previous video of Jane Eyre, we had completed first two pages of this story, and today we will proceed further. So, we were on this paragraph. Let's continue our story. Well, Helen, said I, putting my hands into her. She chafed my fingers gently to warm them and went on. If the entire world hated you and believed you to be wicked, while your own conscience approved you and absolved you from guilty, you would not be without friends. So here, Helen was trying to make Jane understand that even if the whole world is against you, wicked means sinful, unholy. So Helen was telling Jane that even if the whole world is against you, and even if the whole world believes you to be a wrong person, to be a wicked person, but your moral sense, approved you, and you know that you are right, you did nothing wrong, then you cannot be without friends. So basically, she was trying to make her understand that it's important to be right in your own eyes more than to be right in front of everyone else. No, I know I should think well of myself, but that is not enough. If others do not love me, I would rather die than live. I cannot bear to be solitary alone. Solitary means alone, and hate it. To gain some real affection from you or Miss Temple or any other whom I truly love, I would willingly means with your own choice and will, submit to have the bone of my arm broken, or to let a bull toss me, or pause. So again, here we can see that Jane is very desperate. She desperately wanted to be loved or to be liked by her friends or her fellow pupils. So she said that I cannot bear this aloneness. I cannot bear this solitary. I cannot see everybody hating me. So in this condition, I should better die than live. And she was ready to do everything. She was ready to even give her bones. She was ready to do anything to be liked, to be loved by the people around her. Hush, Jane. Hush is an expression for the silence. Hush, Jane. You think too much. I know you are innocent of this charge, which Mr. Brocklehurst has weakly and pompously repeated at second hand from Mrs. Reed, for I read sincerity in your eyes. And Helen told Jane that, Helen, I know that you are not guilty of this charge which Mr. Brocklehurst has just said. He heard it from your aunt, and he had just repeated everything in front of everybody, and she said that I can see I can see that sincerity in your eyes. I can see that you are not guilty. I was silent. Helen had calmed me. I rested my head on Helen's shoulder, and we reposed in silence. We had not sat long thus when another person came in, and they both were just sitting silently with each other. Helen, she rested her head on Helen's shoulder, and they were just quietly sitting there. And it had not been quite long when they saw that another person was coming in. I came on purpose to find you, Jane Eyre, said Miss Temple. So Miss Temple was the warden, and she came for the Jane Eyre. She came for Jane Eyre. I want you in my room, and as Helen Burns is with you, she may too. And she invited Jane to her room, and also Helen Burns. We followed the superintendent's guidance and crossed some intricate passage before we reached her apartment. It contained a good fire and looked cheerful. Miss Temple told Helen Burns to be seated in a low armchair on one side of the hearth and herself taking another. She called me to her side. So, that lady who invited Jane and Helen was Miss Temple, the warden. She called them to her room. They followed by the superintendents. It's like somebody working for the lady, okay? So they followed superintendent's guidance and they crossed the way, crossed that narrow passage, okay? And they reached to the apartment of Miss Temple. That room was quite good looking, cheerful. The ambience of the room was very good, okay? Miss Temple instructed Helen Burns to sit in armchair and she called Jane to herself. "It is all over. Is it all over?" she asked, looking down at my face. "Have you cried your grief away?" And Miss Temple asked Jane that, "Are you fine now? Have you cried your grief away? Don't you have any grief now?" "I'm afraid I shall never do that." "Why?" "Because I have been wrongly accused." Accused means charged. "And you, ma'am, and everyone else will now think me wicked." So Jane said that, "No, I'm not fine because I have been wrongly charged. I have been wrongly charged for something that I never did. And now you and everybody else will think that I am a wicked person. I'm not a good person. I'm unholy." "We shall think you what you prove yourself to be, my child. Continue to act as a good girl and you will satisfy us." And here Miss Temple told Jane that for us, you are not a wicked person because we will only believe what you will show us. You continue to act as a good person and we will just keep believing you. Shall I, Miss Temple? You will, said she, putting her arms round me. Now tell me, who is the lady whom Mr. Brocklehurst called you benefactress? Benefactress means a woman who gives money or other person to help any organization. Now, Miss Temple was curious to know about the benefactress of Jane. And who was that benefactress? Yes, Mrs. Reed. And who is Mrs. Reed? Mrs. Reed is the aunt of Jane Eyre, who left Jane in this institution. Mrs. Reed, my uncle's wife. My uncle is dead and he left me to her care. And this is the introduction of Mrs. Reed. Who was Mrs. Reed? She was Jane's uncle's wife. And her uncle was dead, so he left Jane to her care. Now this line is said by Miss Temple. Did she not then adopt you of her own accord? Accord means will. So again, Miss Temple asked that when your uncle was dead, then your aunt should have adopted you with her own will. No, ma'am, she was sorry to have to do it. I have often heard that my uncle got her promise before he died, that she would always keep me. Okay, so Helen here told her story, her sad story to Miss Temple that no, and my aunt felt very sorry to have accepted me. Okay, and I have also heard that my uncle got her promise that she would keep me, and that's why she kept me. Her aunt only kept Jane because it was a promise. Otherwise, she would have never accepted Jane. Well, Jane, when a criminal is accused, he is always allowed to speak in his own defense. You have been charged with a falsehood. Defend yourself to me as well as you can. Say whatever your memory suggests is true, but add nothing and exaggerate nothing. Miss Temple asked Jane to tell her story, but she said that you are only allowed to speak for your own defense, but say whatever is true. Don't add anything and don't subtract anything and don't exaggerate anything. Exaggerate means when you say something, badha chadha ke baatein karna. Okay, so she said that you have been charged with a falsehood. So defend yourself, but do not say anything which is not true. I resolved in the depth of my heart that I would be moderate, most correct. And at that moment, Jane decided that she will only be moderate with her story. Whatever she will just say appropriately. Having reflected a few minutes to arrange coherently what I had to say, I told her the story of my sad childhood. She took few minutes to clearly think and to clearly reflect her past and what she had to say. And she started to narrate the sad story of her childhood. Exhausted means tired. Exhausted by emotion, my language was more subdued. Subdued means slow. Than it generally was when it developed sad theme. And mindful of Helen's warning against the indulgence of the resentment, I infused into the narrative far less of gall and wormwood than ordinary. I felt as I went on that Miss Temple fully believed me. So her language was slow. Okay, her voice was shivering because she was very broken by the emotion. She was very exhausted when she remembered her sad story. But whatever she said, she believed that Miss Temple fully believed her. In the course of the tale, I had mentioned Mr. Lloyd as having come to see me after the fit, for I never forgot the frightful episode of the Red Room, when Mrs. Reed had looked me in the dark and haunted chamber. Okay, so when she was T-A-L-E, this is tale means story. Okay, so when she was telling her story, she had also mentioned a new name to Miss Temple, and that name was Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd was basically a counselor, or you can say doctor, who used to come to see Jane when she had fit. Fit is bad temper. In Hindi you can get the different word for fit. Okay, so this doctor, Mr. Lloyd, used to come to Jane to look at her when she used to get fit. So after I finished, Miss Temple regarded me for a few minutes. Then she said, I know something of Mr. Lloyd. I shall write to him. If his reply agrees with your statement, you shall be publicly cleared from every imputation. Imputation means charge. To me, Jane, you are clear now. So, when she told the whole story and she mentioned the name of Mr. Lloyd, then at the end of this conversation, Miss Temple told Jane that she already know Mr. Lloyd and now she would write a letter to Mr. Lloyd. And she also said that if Mr. Lloyd's reply comes and it matches with the statement of Jane, then Jane will be publicly declared as the non-guilty. Okay, and she also said that for me you are clear. She kissed me, and she is still keeping me at her side, where I was well contented to stand. She proceeded to address Helen Burns. Now, the whole conversation of Miss Temple with Jane was done, finished, and she talked to Helen Burns, and she asked Helen Burns that, how are you tonight, Helen? Have you coughed much today? Not quite so much, I think, ma'am. And the pain in your chest? It's a little better. So the conversation between Helen and Miss Temple was going on. Okay, and Miss Temple asked Helen that how are you, and she said that I'm quite fine. And she also asked about the pain in the chest of Helen, which she said that it's a little better. So students, we are left with 2 more pages of this story, and that we will do in the next video of this chapter. So let's complete this chapter in the next and the third part of this video. So till then, stay safe, take care.